Thanks, Kevin. This is Selin. Thank you to the University of Pittsburgh for having us today. And we're calling in from Arlington, Virginia. So we like to thank everybody who's out there from all over the country and maybe all over the world. And at this point, I'd like to just say that here at CACI, we have many Pitt alums. I'm not the only one, and this is an organization that has ties to Pittsburgh, and we would like to get started by talking about what we do here. CACI is a technology company in the national security arena, but we have to deal with a lot of things as an organization, and this is one of the things that Dr. London has been interested in over the past few years, is the idea of character in organization and how it makes a big difference. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Jack London.
Thank you, Selin, and thank you, Kevin. It's a pleasure to join the University of Pittsburgh business community today. I'm looking forward to our conversation because, quite frankly, the subject of character has really never been more important or necessary. Just look at the world around you. At the same time, I'd like to note that the views expressed here today are mine and mine alone. So with that, let's get started. So why talk about character? You just need to look at the daily news to see that things are really off track in so many areas. Some recent examples include what has happened over at Volkswagen with the emission control software and their difficulties there. A while back, we had the Enron situation, sort of the poster boy of the difficulties in the last decade, wiped out Arthur Andersen, for example, and of course there was Bernie Madoff, the poster boy for the fraud schemes in Wall Street. So a lot of big risks out there regarding all this, and some detrimental and tragic results to many people. We had a number of problems in the military. Certainly the Navy and the Air Force cheating scandals on nuclear engineering and weapons certification tests stand out as difficulties that probably have all read about. And we've seen reports on widespread problems with the Army and their culture, fraud, and other difficulties. The Army War College recently put out a report. This is the Carlisle organization there in Pennsylvania that you undoubtedly know about, the Army War College. The title of that report was, if you're holding on here, the title was Lying to Ourselves, Dishonesty in the Army Profession. I'm going to repeat that one. Lying to Ourselves, Dishonesty in the Army Profession. So these are some indications. The Naval Academy's alumni magazine, and I'm an alumni of the United States Naval Academy, our magazine is called Shipmate. And I was shocked last winter to pick up the winter edition and note that the cover article was entitled, A Crisis of Character. A Crisis of Character, as a lead article in the United States Naval Academy's alumni magazine. The subheads included the fact that a 3-star Navy admiral had been fired as the #2 commander of U.S. nuclear forces. Another subhead was Navy secrets bought with prostitutes. And a final subhead was there was a Navy pilot charged with being a web predator. These are pretty awful for sure. Then in 2012, George Washington University, my alumni, my doctorate alumni, admitted falsified information statistics on incoming freshmen for over 10 years. And we see it every sport, from kids' leagues to the pros, has had widespread cases of cheating and match fixing and doping and bribery and all the rest. Plagiarism in journalism, crimes within the law enforcement community are also out there, and you've undoubtedly read about. It seems there isn't a part of our society that hasn't had issues with serious character flaws. Banking, commerce, industry, military, government, sports, and even religion. So how do I define character? To me, character is a unique set of moral and ethical qualities that define what you believe in, what you stand for, and what you expect of yourself and others. It also embraces the notions of integrity, values, core values, and doing the right thing, ethical behavior. While a variety of factors form our capabilities and influence our lives, I believe that how you act on these qualities, your statement of character, will determine how far you will go. Having good character does not mean being perfect or self-righteous. A person's, an organization's, even a country's character is always a work in progress. There's always room for improvement, something new to learn for all of us, no matter where we are in our lives or in our careers. To me, it's a lifetime pursuit. So, Selin, at this point, I believe we have a couple of questions to ask our audience.
Indeed we do, Jack. I wanted to see from our participants out there what their experiences were. Now, think of the organizations you currently work in, study at, take your pick. But let's take the first question. Do you believe there is a strong culture of ethics and integrity in your organization? Your options are easy, yes or no. And second question is, have you ever witnessed wrongdoing in your organization? Again, yes or no. Now, the reason we want to ask this is we're sort of curious to know about our attendees' experiences and what they've been seeing or not seeing. So I believe you have a minute here to give us some answers, and then we'll respond to them. So everyone, please chime in with your experiences. Okay, poll seems to have ended from my end. Unfortunately, we can't see the results. All right, so we have a little bit of a technical glitch there, but that's okay. I'm hoping that everybody believes that their organizations do well when it comes to doing the right thing. Oh, here we go. Now we have some answers. Sorry. Let's see. Dr. London, let's see, about 90, we've got a 70-some% of our attendees believe that their organizations embrace ethics and integrity. Interesting enough, and something we thought might happen, half the attendees believe that they've witnessed wrongdoing in their organization. What do you think about that?
Well, that seems to fit broadly within the kinds of results we've seen. The wrongdoing coefficient perhaps a little less likely in some of the other surveys we've had. But anyway, I'm going to focus on organizational character today, emphasize that aspect of it, because organizations and people what we associate with bring the biggest character challenges. That's in terms of creating an organization that has a good, strong basis of integrity and character. So how do you know if you're aligned with good organizations? Anyway, what an organization believes is the right way to conduct its affairs. Its character is, quite frankly, embodied in its culture. Culture starts with foundation documents in an organization that state organization's missions, values, and guiding principles, and I certainly encourage you to create these if you don't have them. They're reinforced by organizational codes of conduct and ethics, which must be regularly updated by management and reviewed by all employees to stay current and in keeping with what the compliance requirements are. At CACI, we have some documents. We call them the CACI Way. There are foundation documents, including some management manuals and culture spotlights. Culture spotlights are articles that I write once a month and put out focusing on aspects of our culture and our integrity focus. So institutionalizing culture in an organization is an ongoing commitment. It's got to be. The members must embody the culture. This is how an organization, its members, earn their reputation and credibility, not only internally, but within their client arena or their constituent arena, whatever the situation, our customers for that matter. I see it as an ongoing process of continuing review, embodiment, and repeating the important aspects of your culture and how it plays in the value for your organization. Good organizational culture and character, however, doesn't come from documents or policies. It comes from values. The core value of an organization, organizational character, in my view, is a concept we all are familiar with, and that is trust. In fact, the former DHS Secretary and also a former Pennsylvania Governor, Mr. Tom Ridge, said, and I quote, "Trust is a great force multiplier," unquote. And in my view, that's because trust is what gives credibility and action to our words. As you can see from the numbers listed here from the Edelman Trust Barometer, a research and study group, we seem to trust complete strangers more than we trust the people in charge. And I alluded to that a little bit earlier. We'll start with trustworthy people. You're not going to get anywhere in an organization if you can't count on people and their dependability and reliability. And from my experience, these attributes tend to have the following characteristics. Trustworthy people have good attitudes, positive, constructive, will-do, can-do attitudes, but they're reinforced by their integrity and ethics and notion of doing the right thing. And they, furthermore, have a commitment to that. So it's not just a transient thing or once an occasional way of behaving. It's a steady commitment, a belief, a core value belief. And, of course, there's got to be the expertise and experience that relates in the organizational performance. I also think in terms of mission people versus political people. And when I talk about political people, I'm talking about the little p political, not political parties. Mission people are people that put the objective of the organization and fulfilling their jobs and responsibilities as the highest priority in getting the job done. And they're willing to subordinate themselves to their personal satisfactions or personal recognitions. Political people, on the other hand, are just the opposite. When things go wrong, they're the ones that point to somebody else as being the fault. At the same time, if things are successful, they're the group that wants to take credit for it. And I venture it's no surprise to you that I try to build an organization that's loaded with high-intensity, mission-oriented people. And by the way, mission people tend to want to flock together and work together. So you get a momentum associated with recruiting mission-oriented, mission-focused people. Now I'm going to ask some questions of the group. You don't have to answer, but I want you to think about what you would do in circumstances related to these questions. The first one is really a straight away. Do your colleagues know the difference between right or wrong? Do your colleagues know the difference between right or wrong? Is the difference clear to everyone? Between clearly right and obviously wrong, there's a vast and challenging gray area in the middle. And frankly, quite frankly, it's open to a lot of interpretation, depending on viewpoints and understanding of data and so on, facts. One way people get in trouble, though, is by thinking the ends justify the means. Example would be, of course, if your boss were to ask you to find creative ways to achieve big goals, significant achievements, what would you do? What would you, if they were told you or asked you to cut some corners or take some shortcuts? What are you going to do? How would you react in that kind of situation? Well, let's take an example. A big example, a very current one, as a matter of fact. The Department of Veterans Affairs, between the time period 1995 and 2012, that was the time given for employees to schedule doctor's appointments for vets, and during that period decreased by 75%. So the time to do those appointments was dramatically decreased. But veteran outpatients increased 46% between 2007 and 2013. The demand seemed to be overwhelming, if you get the picture. Time to set the appointments was reduced, but the requirements to be satisfied were greatly increased. So in the process, investigations found that the schedulers seemed to be pressured to use inappropriate practices to make waiting times appear shorter. So you're talking about sort of record keeping, fudging the record keeping. In military, we use a term called gun decking for falsifying reports. Managers felt compelled in this case to manipulate records to meet performance goals and objectives. They're trying to look good, trying to appear to be satisfying their requirements. The trouble is it didn't work. There were serious problems in the VA culture, resulted in tragic consequences for our veterans. This is really a big deal. It's estimated that over the past 20 years or so that some 300,000 American military veterans likely died waiting for health care. So when you hear people these days talking about the problems with the Veterans Administration and its inability to provide the proper care for our wonderful veterans, especially coming out of these recent wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, you know where the issues are coming from. The lesson here is that some people simply aren't using best judgment. They're not using good judgment. And right and wrong, as you can easily see from my illustration, don't apparently appear to be the same to everyone. But good character means knowing what's right and acting on it to your best of your ability. So let's go on. What's the next question? Here's my next question for you. Can you admit to making a mistake? Could you report mistakes being made? This relates to the second question Selin had asked earlier. I'll take an example. Some of you may know Takata, the Japanese airbag manufacturer. Turns out in 2004, Takata engineers confirmed a potentially dangerous design flaw in their airbags and prepared for a recall. But the management executives and leadership of the corporation discounted the results and frankly told the employees to trash the evidence. Unbelievable. But by 2014, they had suffered, as a result here, 8 fatalities, and 100+ injuries that were linked to the Takata airbags. In fact, 11 automobile makers, recalled over 4 million vehicles worldwide on this issue. Takata executives apologized, but it was too late and too little for those 8. The management executives failed to be responsible, but employees like the quality testers and the quality control people, the engineers, also had some responsibility here to speak up or to let their grievances be known. Maybe a hotline call, anonymous hotline call. So this is a big problem, as you can see. The stats here show a majority of employees ignored problems, hoped they would get away with, or felt hapless. Too many people are afraid to speak up, and that's a significant problem in organizational cultural difficulties with regard to character and integrity. The challenge is that many think accountability is just about blame. It's actually ownership. Accountability is ownership over our decisions, our actions, and the consequences. And it's an important difference in perspective that can empower employees to speak up and make things right. And that's the important part here. What helps is having a fair system, a reliable and fair system of reporting and adjudicating grievances and ethics breaches that I've tried to emphasize. Speaking up about problems is a responsibility we all have. And to fail to take on that responsibility makes our organizations weak and ineffective. In fact, in some cases, even dangerous. Now let's talk about leadership. Are standards of ethics and conduct enforced by leaders in your organization? I'll say that again. Are standards of ethics and conduct enforced by the leaders in your organization? And what's the message coming from the top? How do you hear it? What are you seeing? What's your impression? Apparently, for many, it's not a good one. According to certain studies, only 20% of Americans believe business leaders and government officials will tell the truth when confronted with a difficult issue. But I think honesty is a big part of the leadership job. In the 1980s, CACI had problems with time card violations on one of our contracts, misrepresentations. We were given a probation period and created a new system to eliminate mischarging, the likelihood of mischarging. As CEO at the time, I used that experience to institute company-wide training on CACI's culture and to update our codes of conduct and standards of ethics. But unfortunately, not all business leaders think this way. For example, for over a decade now, General Motors organization had designed problems in several of their models that contributed to at least, on the last count, some 124 deaths. When I first started looking at this problem, the listing was 13 deaths. Something at issue there. The GM executive said they were unaware, of course. And the current CEO, Mary Barra, even said that, reported that, testified to Congress to that extent. But I'm skeptical. In my view, my experience, actions like these can't be hidden. They were willful, intentional, and calculated. And during this time, all of these things seemed to happen when the American taxpayers were bailing out General Motors with billions of dollars. And even later, many of their executives made huge bonuses, multi-million-dollar bonuses, over a corporation that had been withholding information about their design problems and cost the lives of many people. So leaders must be character role models. It's their job required to cultivate organizational culture. Leaders must communicate what's appropriate and what's not in the way of behavior for the organization. They've got to recognize and reinforce good ethical behavior while responding in a similar fashion appropriately to the wrongdoing in the organization. Organizational character starts at the top. It's just that simple. Studies show that the person in charge, the person leading an organization, is inextricably linked with the trust in the organization itself. Powerful statement, powerful thought, but true. All leaders, team leaders, project leaders, and executives must sustain good character in the organization. Everyone needs to be a role model and set the example. And I must add, it's something that has to be continually worked on. So character gives us more than just a perspective on right and wrong. It shapes how we assess and approach situations. And that's why it's so extremely valuable. And what we've seen in the examples I gave earlier here, it's clear to me, and I would reflect it to you as well, that character is what generally makes the difference. It sets it apart. It's the distinction. So let's recap the keys to making the character difference. They're straightforward, and I'm going to review them here. Trust gives credibility and action to our words. So you've got to have the right people. It's important to understand that right and wrong is clear to everyone, but not necessarily the same. So you've got to recognize the gray areas and where they exist. To err is human. That's for sure. But taking responsibility is not superhuman. We can all do the right thing if we focus on the right thing and keep our standards high and remain loyal and true to our core values. Leaders have to create and sustain ethical organizations. That's the leader's job. In fact, it's the top man or woman's job to create and sustain the organization. And that example quite clearly cannot start anywhere but at the top. Now, some of you may be wanting to ask me a question or so. May it be this is the question you want to ask. Does character really make a difference in an organization? Jack, tell us. And is there any proof? Well, quite frankly, there is a lot of proof out there. Yes, there is. An investment in character pays off and pays off big. The 2014 Ethics and Compliance Effectiveness Report says that the best performing organizations prioritize ethical leadership, use the organization's values as a framework for decision making, and embrace culture. Embrace culture as a competitive advantage. The 2015 report added that the most effective ethics and compliance programs didn't do ethics. Rather, they focused on enabling their business units to do culture and get compliance as an outcome. The report also found that the leaders of such programs successfully built ethics and compliance into their organizations and did not bolt it on simply as a layer of controls or some kind of poster that they put up in the coffee kitchen. They made it alive and vital in their organizations. And also, according to the Corporate Executive Board, high-integrity companies enjoy productivity gains, improved internal communications, better strategic alignment, and had better shareholder returns across both 5- and 10-year time periods. Powerful for the public corporation perspective, quite clearly. I also know of one organization where focusing on character and integrity has really paid off. It's CACI. We've been in business 54 years, and I can count on one hand, in fact on 3 fingers, incidences over that 54-year period where we had major consequences or problems associated with integrity or character issues. And I submit to you that's a terrific record, one that we are very proud of, and I submit to you will stand up against the record of any corporation that's been in business for over half a century. So here are our last couple of questions. Selin, if you'd pose them for our...
Sure, Jack. Thinking about the things we've just talked about, including the results, I want you to look back onto your organizations again and answer the following questions. What steps does your organization take to ensure good character? Do you have programs? Do you have training tools? Or do you look more to the examples set by the leaders, the mentors, or the role models in your organization? Are there awards and recognitions for good behavior? Or is there something else? Try to pick the one that best fits your organization. And the second question is, which factor needs the most improvement in your organization? Is it trust? Is there clarification on what's right and wrong in the organization? Is it accountability? Or perhaps you look at the top to leadership, and maybe it's something else, it's other. So please take the time here to answer these questions, and after they're tabulated, we'll take a look and chat a little bit about them. Okay, Dr. London, number one, what steps does your organization take to ensure good character? We've got about 50% of our respondents saying they've got programs and training tools. The example set by their leaders, et cetera, is about 24%. And to a lesser extent, at a tie, we've got awards and recognitions at 6% and other at 6%. Now, we've got some interesting results for our second question. So we've got about 24% that say it's trust that needs the most improvement. 12% say that they need to work on understanding what's right and wrong. 47%, I don't know, I don't know some of these numbers. Maybe I'm looking at the results wrong. But we've got a nice mix of throughout the board that accountability needs some work. And then actually leadership is the one that needs the least amount of attention according to our respondents.
Well, I would just, thanks, Selin, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I would simply make a point here that under our steps organizations take to ensure good character, sounds to me like there's some work to be done there. Pretty soft in those areas, especially the leadership area and the programs and training. Programs and training the 50% or less, that would be pretty much on the soft side. In terms of the factors needing most improvement, I'm stunned by the accountability issue, because accountability is crucial to the success of an organization. You can't get to accountability until you have trust. Knowing the right versus wrong, so that's an interesting set of data there, and I would just tell you that these are the kinds of elements that you've got to focus on. This list here, if you will, has got to be focused on in building a strong organization that has character, that has the integrity and the knowing how to do the right thing, and will be successful in whatever its endeavor, whatever the objectives of the organization. I guarantee you that improving organizational character and the notion of integrity and building the momentum of your team of people in these areas will increase the effectiveness of the organization, and frankly, I think your people will be more proud of what they're doing and be more proud of the relationships and enjoy being a part of an organization that reflects these kinds of viewpoints and perspectives. So So that's, I guess, some evidence, and I would just emphasize again that I virtually guarantee the focus on this, improving these areas, will improve the quality and performance of your organization. So what's the bottom line about all this anyway, Selin? Here's my views. Character is the only thing that creates genuine success in an organization, as well as for the individuals. And that's for today and in the future. Some organizations may find success as a result of wrongdoing, but it never lasts. You can only cheat the public or cheat or work the scam game for so long. The perfect example of that is the Enron situation, where they're falsifying their financial performance. At some point, it cratered on them. It all caved in. And that's because any gap in any organization, perceived or real, between how an organization says it acts and how it actually acts, how it behaves, creates the risk of failure. It puts into question the organization's work, its reputation, its image, and frankly, its survival. And I reflect back on Enron, perfect example. Crushed so many people. So these just go back to some of the examples I gave earlier, but it's for sure that all kinds of stakeholders will be rightly asking those questions and these questions to the customers, employees, investors, the media, as well as the public about how does that organization operate and what's its ethical standard and quality and character. So acting on an organization's good character and culture simply is the best way to go, and it pays off, and I think I've demonstrated that. And you probably recognize the name of Marriott. I put this one up. It's one of my favorite quotes of all. Quite the successful family and company that I'm sure you all, probably every one of us on the line, have been in a Marriott hotel or restaurant at some point. The founder of that organization, J.W. Marriott, once said, and I quote, "Success is a combination of many things, but a good character is a foundation of the kind of success that will bring you real happiness," unquote. And I couldn't agree more. And furthermore, I would reflect that that is not only an individual perspective, but an organizational perspective. So it fits both the perspectives that I've touched on here and focused on in our discussions. I believe character drives long-term success, lifelong success. And this is what my book is all about. It was published in 2013, and for 2 years now I've found audiences want a greater emphasis on doing the right thing. I've had dozens of speaking engagements and the opportunity to speak in front of close to 7,000 people now on these topics. And as my good friend Norman Augustine, the former CEO and chairman of Lockheed Martin Corporation, wrote in the foreword of my book, character is something we should all think about, no matter where we are in life. And I couldn't agree more. I'm also grateful to my friends, Roger Staubach. Some of you may recognize that name. Roger was the Heisman Trophy winner in 1965 for the United States Naval Academy. And some of you may recognize his participation on a team called the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe the Pittsburgh folks might reflect on that a little bit. And also as well, my two very close friends, Vietnam prisoners of war, the infamous Hanoi Hilton, Commander Everett Alvarez, who was incarcerated 8.5 years, and Colonel Lee Ellis, who was incarcerated 5.5 years, for their words of support as well. These endorsements are all in the back of my book. Of course, Norman wrote the foreword. I believe you may recognize them. They're all great, have a great understanding of what character is all about, and are great Americans. I was very pleased and honored to have them participate. I would also mention that all proceeds from the sale of the book go to an organization by the name of CAUSE. CAUSE stands for Comfort for America's Uniformed Services.
I think we might have lost connection there with you, Dr. London. Are you guys still there?
Yes, I think our host will take over from here, but I want to say thank you and hail to Pitt.
Thank you very much, Selin. And thank you as well, Dr. London, both for your comments on the webinar and your service to our country. At this time, we will address your questions. If you have a question about any of the material presented this afternoon, simply submit a question via the Q&A tab. If your presentation is full screen and you wish to submit questions, you will need to exit the full screen view and return to the WebEx event window before you will see the Q&A tab on the right of the screen. We'd also like to welcome you to our next webinar, which will be hosted next Wednesday, November 4th. It'll be hosted by Ms. Bird, who is a former CBA alumni. She is the Managing Director of Policy IQ at Resources Global Professionals. That'll be at noon Eastern Time. We also have several upcoming events for the 20th anniversary of Pitt Business, including the Associate Dean Roadshow in Boston and Greensburg over the next 2 weeks, and again, the webinar on November 11th. We'd welcome you all to follow us on social media, including our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages to see what our current Pitt Business students are doing. And at this time, we'll turn it over to the question and answer portion.
Okay.
Yes, our first question is posted by Megan, and she asked, who are some of the leaders that you admire? I believe this one goes to both you, Selin, and Dr. London.
Well, I had the great opportunity to serve a number of naval officers that were veterans of the heroes and veterans of the Second World War, and became leaders of the Navy when I was in the naval service in the 1960s. So I have a lot of reflections on my life at the Naval Academy, which I will attribute many of these values and the perspectives to my time at the Academy and the indoctrination and training and the recognition of the importance of these values in American society and American culture, and so some of them are naval officers. I also have just to list a few others that you'll find in my book. Certainly George Washington is one that I have tremendous regard for. People sometimes kind of, well, you mean Jack, he's the guy that cut down the cherry tree and told his dad he couldn't tell a lie and so forth. No, there's much more to it than that. And I've woven that into the book, as you will see as you read through it. I also have a lot of regard for Ulysses S. Grant during the Civil War, and quite frankly, just the opposite side of the battle space was Robert E. Lee. Individuals that had demonstrated character and integrity, obviously for different causes, and I'm not here to argue the political perspectives, but as individuals and doing the best that they could with the situation that they had in their life. There are many others in our society and culture. I have a book entitled Profiles in Courage that was written by John F. Kennedy that my mother happened to get him to sign it back in the early 60s to her son, who was Lieutenant JG in the United States Navy. So I have a signed copy of Profiles in Courage written by John Kennedy that reflects on some of the role models. So you can find them in your workspace. You can find them in history. You can study people and what they did, the kinds of sacrifices they may have made to stand up for what's right. But those are just a few that have touched me in my lifetime, and we've all had different experiences, but I wanted to just kind of share perspectives.
And I'd just like to add to that, you know, what Jack said, you can find people you admire in different situations throughout your life, and just to look at the example that people set as something to follow, that you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a big celebrity or it doesn't have to be a leader, but I think the person in the situation can emerge as a leader, and you can take some of those attributes and examples and use them for yourself. So how about our next question?
Yes, thank you both for your answer there. Our next question comes to us from Greg. He's saying, strong organizational culture, to me, describes a high level of unity, communication, engagement, and accountability within the group. Most of the focus in organizations are on diversity. Do you feel there is somewhat of a conflicted message at times?
I love that question because it's one that has been a challenge in so many ways to our organization. And I certainly respect the importance of diversity in the sense of we all come from different directions and different backgrounds and different cultures and all the rest of it. But my focus is a little different. I'm looking for e pluribus unum, which is the one of the mottos of our great nation. Out of many, one. Out of all of us, as we come together to build ourselves into a team and with mutual respect and understanding and focus on doing things together successfully. That goes back to my idea of being a mission, looking for mission-oriented people. So I respect diversity. It's a very important consideration in our great land of the melting pot of the United States, but the basic success factor for our great nation will be where we consider the mantra we have of e pluribus unum, how to make take all of us together and learn to work together successfully and to create a wonderful nation, a free nation, and a great culture with liberty and opportunity for all.
I agree. Can't say much more than that. How about the next one?
That was a very well-spoken answer, Dr. London. Our next question comes to us, and it says, how can you, as a company leader, recover after your clients lost the trust of your company? I think it's more of a hypothetical question.
That is a powerful question. I bear that in mind, literally, because I know as we go along that is the fatal step for an organization. And I would reflect back on the examples I gave you, the Enron, certainly WorldCom. There were others, especially in that decade, Lehman Brothers, that are no longer in business. Their breaches of integrity and fraud and criminal activities, a lack of character, if you will, put them out of business. And along went with them the employee base, the shareholders, whoever their constituencies, the clientele, and all the rest. So it's something that I think about all the time. And I would say to you that the breach of trust, if it's severe enough, it can put you out of business, as the examples I just gave. Trust is one of these things that's very hard to create. It takes a time. It takes elapsed time. It takes interaction, a number of activities that support and demonstrate trust. Trust has to be demonstrated over a period of time. But the sad part of all of it is it can be destroyed in an instant by a breach of faith, some kind of violation of law. I think perhaps you might want to think just in terms of personal relationships, men and women relationships, the integrity of trust, and what happens when infidelities and issues of that kind present themselves. Yeah, they're broken and very difficult ever to put back together. The same is for organizations.
I like to just bring that more to an individual level, is that trust, again, like you said, it's a long-term process. Some days it's more, some days it's less. But I'd like to go back to the point made earlier about accountability. It's owning what you say, what you do, what you don't do. And one of the things I've seen reinforced with Dr. London, for example, is that if you got bad news or if something hasn't happened that you've been waiting for, when there's something not right happening, is to be forthright about it, saying, hey, we didn't get this information in, or hey, I made a mistake, and then saying, here's what I'm going to do to get what we didn't find, the information we didn't get. Here's what I'm going to do to fix my error. I think when you stand up and say, my bad, and here's my solution to fix it, I think that's a big part of regaining trust, too. And I think that's something we can all do individually in our lives, in our organizations, and I think that's also a great example to set to our colleagues and also to our leaders.
Okay, thank you very much, both. Very detailed responses there. Our next question goes back to Megan, who asked a follow-up question for how do you grow and develop as a leader? Are there any resources for personal and professional growth that you can recommend?
That's another good question. We're hitting all the bells here. I think the willingness to take risk, growth is associated with stretching and taking risks, and I have a section in our book, Success Breeds Success, that if you learn to take risks, calculated risks, and are successful at it, and they can be in all types of risks, financial risk, professional risks, relationship risks, and so on. Building a track record of success as you go along gives you more confidence to take next steps, which are always part of growth. And I think there are educational programs or training programs you can engage in or involve in. There's reading, a lot of material out to be read. I would recommend my book in that regard, as a matter of fact. But I wasn't here to sell books, but quite frankly, the material in my book does focus in the idea of path for growth and establishing your success path. And we do talk about some ways that can be put into place. So there's a lot of things you can do if you're focused on it and make it a priority. That you're interested in leadership positions, you're willing to take risks. If people ask you to participate, you're willing to volunteer and step up and participate and be a part of the team going forward. So it's a growing process, and I think it's step by step. It's incremental, but it's important to focus on it and have it as an objective, something you want to accomplish in your life and in your professional career.
I'd like to add to that one distinction that Dr. London likes to make, and that's we've discussed many times, is the difference between a leader and a manager. You know, the managing involves a lot of work. You may be in a leadership position, but managers tend to get the day-to-day functions done, the reports, etc. But good leaders and how they grow is by taking it to the next level. You know, and things that Dr. London has talked about is that good leaders develop a vision. They get people to commit to that vision. And they, you know, sometimes there's risk involved, but what they do is they empower their people. And this is something I've seen Dr. London do over the time I've worked here. So that's very important to remember, I think, is that the difference between leadership and managing is quite big. And again, you know, I'm not here to sell books either, but it's an issue that we went into detail in Dr. London's book. So I recommend maybe taking a look at that.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have one last question for both you, Selin, and Dr. London, and it comes from anybody who's listening in as a student. It's my own question, and as a student who's about to enter the workforce here in a few months, what advice could you give to myself or any other students who are about to enter in the workforce in regards to making an impact in the companies that we go to work for, and not only the companies, but our country as a whole?
My formula that fits here, I think, appropriately is that employers, organizations thrive because there are people in them that have great, get-it-done, can-do attitudes. Probably the most important ingredient, at least from my standpoint, Kevin, when I'm recruiting or looking to bring people in the organization. The first thing I look for is their attitude. It's a positive, constructive, can-do, will-get-it-done type of attitude. Now, that's not the only thing. Certainly looking for, as I mentioned earlier, integrity as an ingredient, powerfully important. Individuals' ability to make a commitment in terms of professional performance and dedication to the mission of the organization. And of course, the other thing that's always important is that's the expertise and the competence and the experience. But the most important ingredient, and actually I kind of list them in that order, is the attitude, integrity, commitment, and expertise. And if you kind of keep those in mind as you go out into the workplace and out into the arena, and use those as sort of your guide lights or guiding lights in terms of how you present yourself. And you have to believe it. I think you'll find it'll work quite well for you, because that's really what employers, the military, government, whatever society is looking for. Even sports teams have to have people who can work together, play together, which means you've got to have the right kind of attitude. obviously got to be able to have competence in your skill set, but you've got to be able to work together, and that is a major ingredient. And I would commend that to you, Kevin, and to your colleagues and all of you as you enter the workforce, the organizations you'll be talking to, and people you'll be speaking with.
Absolutely. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you both, and I appreciate that answer. I think that that's certainly something that all of us can take away as we either move into the workforce or transition into new organizations within the community. Selin and Dr. London, I'd like to turn it back over to you in these last few minutes. If you have anything additional that you'd like to add, and then I'll just end it over here, but we'd like to say thank you once again, Dr. London and Selin Hur, for joining us today. And if you guys have anything else to add in.
I would just say thank you for the opportunity to visit with you, Kevin, and your colleagues. It's a wonderful world out there. There's a lot of opportunity for people that have the attitude and the character and integrity and want to get things done. You still have to have your skill sets. I don't want to give the impression that you can get by without being able to be competent in your profession. But I'm just sharing with you the important aspect of the character integrity and how that will augment and reinforce your opportunities as you go forward. The title of my book is Character, the Ultimate Success Factor. And what we mean by the ultimate success factor, quite frankly, is at the end of the day, I will guarantee you that you will feel better about yourself. If you look in the mirror, if you've followed some of the suggestions that we presented here today. And I further think that it will provide you with greater opportunity professionally and from an economic standpoint as well. So we want to thank you again for the opportunity to be with you. These are important times, and quite frankly, character has never been more important in our culture and our society. So thank you very much.
I'd like to say thank you, Dr. London, for joining the Pitt business community today. Thank you to all of our attendees, and thank you to everybody at the University of Pittsburgh for inviting us and having us today. So I hope everyone takes these lessons on into their lives, into their careers, into their organizations, and hail to Pitt.
All righty. Thank you very much, Selin Hur and Dr. London. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's webinar. On behalf of the University of Pittsburgh, I'd like to personally thank you for your attendance today. Enjoy the rest of your days.